All right, let's see. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much again for joining me for Astrology in the News for February 19th, 2018, and what seems to be one of the most exhausting months that I can remember in quite a long time. So, today we're going to be talking about a few people in the news, okay? And actually, I got some pretty cool charts for you because we've got birth times for these people, and that is so rare where I will pick things out of the news and will actually get the birth time of the person because what it does is it gives us an accurate ascendant. We don't have to read things from the moon. I also changed the chart style a little bit, so hopefully you'll enjoy this a little bit more and it's a little bit easier to read and understand. So starting off here, the first, oops. So Mayim Bialik, I think, is advocating civil disobedience over gun control. So I figured, let's take a look at her chart because, she's been in the news a little bit recently, but she's kind of more of a B celebrity. And of course, if you don't know Mayim, she's from the Big Bang Theory and she's also been on Blossom, which are pretty much her two biggest claims to fame. But I think she's also like a math professor or something. Or wait, no, maybe that's the girl from the Wonder Years or something like that. I don't know what else she's done, but anyway, she's basically telling people to sit on train tracks and blow up bridges and all that. No, not blow up bridges, but be civilly disobedient, as if people are already disobedient. But let's take a look at her chart. So, looking at Miriam's chart, this is actually pretty interesting because I think she's actually very sincere. And so when it comes to civil activism, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to change this for next time. But behind my head, my big old head here, let me see if I can change this up a little bit so you can see it. I'm just gonna go ahead and shrink myself down a little bit there. Let's see if this kind of works here. Oh, look at it go. I'm sorry, it's kind of watching this stuff. I'm kind of like the guy on TV that's just like, oh man, look at this go. So anyway, if you take if you take a look at her chart, she's got it's ascendant in the sign of Cancer, and Cancers are actually very caring. They're very sincere in how they perceive their emotions. And if you also take another look at her chart, she's got a lot of planets and water signs, and so not only is her ascendant in a water sign, her sun's in a water sign, her moon's in the water sign, and Jupiter's in a water sign. So we're talking about a person that really has a lot of emotion and they really intuit and interpret and feel things on that empathic level. So she also has let's see, what else does she have? So she has Venus, which is actually a pretty good placement in the sign of Libra in the fourth house, and also to the north node of the moon. And then, of course, Mercury is in the sign of Sagittarius, which generally indicates a high level of education. I think she went back to get her master's degree or doctorate's degree, so she is very well educated. But the thing is, when we have a Cancer ascendant, one of the things that you notice here is Saturn is placed retrograde in the first house, which usually indicates somebody that has a fairly low level of self-esteem. So it and really this kind of corrects itself growing up. So that's why we can always take a look at the Navamsha. So when we take a look at her Navamsa chart, which has become active, it becomes active after the age of 36. Her ascendant moon and Venus are on the sign of Aquarius, which is a very let's see, Aquarius and Sagittarius are very much related to social activism. Aquarius too is really related to science, and so really, it's when we take a look at her chart, we can kind of see how the acting and the science and all this stuff comes together in one area. And then, of course, you see the activism too with all the planets and the water signs, especially like that Jupiter moon in Pisces. I mean, that's like really bleeding heart, wear your emotions on the sleeve type. So if you ever see that in a chart and you're doing a consultation, really empathic people are ruled by water signs. Okay, now LeBron James feuds with Ann Coulter. So I figured, hey, you know what, this is a great opportunity to take a look at LeBron's chart because let's face it, other than Michael Jordan, LeBron and a couple other people, LeBron is the best basketball player to ever play the game. And so another time we could do Ann Coulter's chart, but if you're not familiar with it, Ann Coulter basically said, LeBron, stick to dribbling your ball around, and LeBron was like, screw off, Ann, go do your witch hunts or whatever Ann Coulter does in her basement in the middle of the night. I guess we'll never really know. I guess she probably worships Rush Limbaugh. But anyway, this is LeBron's chart. So LeBron has, so this is, really when we look at this, we look at what constitutes a lot of success, and that is the planet Rahu. And so when you look at LeBron's chart, he actually has his ascendant is in the sign of Gemini, and then his Jupiter, Sun, and Neptune are all in the sign of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius really has a lot to do with athleticism. But it's kind of interesting because when I look at this chart, when it comes to Geminis, Geminis really like to be the center of attention, and this is really natural by just the Gemini birth. And then also too, his moon is in Pisces too, so that's kind of like, it's really interesting that LeBron decided to go into basketball, because when I look at his chart, I see somebody that is fairly athletic, but it's kind of a stretch as to see how this athleticism plays out in his chart itself. And also too, here it is. All right, so this is why we put in fixed stars. Formula, actually, if you look at his chart down here, Formula is conjunct Mars. So this can be very positive or troublesome. And so it also shows somebody that is famous. So, if we're talking about fame, and you'll see this also in Sylvester Stallone's chart, people that have Formula and Spica tend to become famous. Now, Formula is a little bit more of actually geared toward entertainers. So I'm surprised LeBron decided not to go into something like entertainment, music, musicians, and things like that, because there's a talent there too. But he definitely got his fame from this star. Now, the other thing that I want you to take a note of is the other fixed star that's very prominent in his chart is Algol, and you see this here. The north node of the moon is conjunct Algol, and this is really, it's not a very good placement in general, but we have to kind of take things in context. So if you're not familiar with Algol, it's basically represented by the head of Medusa. And so in the constellations, it's shown by Perseus holding up the head of Medusa. And this represents, well, classically beheadings, executions, and things like that. But really, in a modern context, the symbolism is somebody losing their mind or losing their head. Donald Trump actually has his midheaven here. So LeBron James is actually getting triggered by the same energy that Donald Trump gets triggered by with everybody else. It's kind of easy to kind of poke these people, and, all of a sudden they're like, blah, and they just lose their minds. And it's not necessarily losing their minds. It's just that they're really can get really too discombobulated at times. So that is Mr. LeBron James. Next, hey, everybody said I'm dead. Well, kinda not really. My impression's really bad, but Sly's not dead. Okay? I don't know if you saw this on the internet, but Sylvester Stallone, there's this rumor going around that poor Sly guy got fried and was dead, but he's not dead. Thank God, because you know what? I want to see Rambo 14. I really want to see Rambo 14, where he goes after, let's see, went after space aliens in the other movie. Then he went after Russians, and then Vietnamese. I want him to take on, like, who should he take on? I think he should take on the Swedes. Rambo goes to Sweden and has some, like, gefilte fish or whatever they have there. So let's take a look at Sly Guy's chart, because you will see some of the interesting planetary combinations for fame again as well. Man, this guy has a lot of great famous energy. So first of all, let's take a look at some of the fixed stars. Bellatrix, okay? Bellatrix really indicates somebody that's, I've seen people that are teachers, actually, and healers. He also has Uranus conjunct the north node of the moon. Lots and lots of eccentric energy. And actually, the north node of the moon is exalted in Taurus. There's a little debate about that. Some people say it's a different sign, that Rahu's actually exalted in the sign of Virgo. But really, I think classically it's both the nodes are exalted. So when you see Rahu in the sign of Taurus, there's a lot of material success. Ketu is also exalted in Scorpio. But when you look at this, there's a lot of spirituality involved in this chart. And Sly Stallone doesn't really talk about it too much. And he also has the Sun conjunct Sirius. This software says it's a royal star, but it's not technically a royal star, but it's a very powerful star. Then he also has, Spica and Arcturus are very close to each other, but really what you look at, what brings the fame is Spica. Spica brings fame, Spica brings overnight successes. Lottery winners have Spica strong in their chart. Canopus too. That one's actually really good for fame, and it says can cause fights. I mean, this guy got started with Rocky, so yeah. So Sylvester Stallone has a really frigging awesome chart. If you ever want to study a chart, his chart is great for fame, and also too. I mean, looking at this stuff, this all occurs in the 10th house with the moon being in Spica, and then his career. Jupiter's there. I mean, wow, this guy's got a lot of great stuff going on. So of course we get Mr. Fake News. Why does he like Twitter? Ah, yes. This Donald Trump is basically the first real social media president. And part of, people talk to me about the age of Aquarius once in a while. And really part of the age of Aquarius is the evolution and democratization of information and how we use it. How we use information, how we access information is all changing. And so, really, what we're seeing right now is a complete and utter societal shakeup over the internet and how information goes out. Because if you think about it, for many years, the media really controlled the narrative, but through things like Facebook and YouTube and other platforms, for the most part, we can gain, like Wikipedia, we can gain access to information for free. I mean, I guess you could go to the library there, but the way that we access and process information is changing. So this is what is in Donald Trump's chart that makes him like Twitter. And you're going to think that I'm a little like, well, where's this coming from? But it's Mercury in Gemini. Gemini is really about social media. And so a lot of Donald Trump's personality you see right here is ruled by this Mercury and Gemini. That's how he communicates. And Mercury is very strong. It's at 15 degrees of Gemini. This is also in his 11th house, too, when it comes to network communications and network circles. So, really, other presidents have been very filtered in the way that they communicate, but Donald Trump is not. And really, this axis right here, I know a lot of astrologers kind of pin his destruction on this axis, but really, if you look at the Sun conjunct Rahu, conjunct Uranus, like Sylvester Stallone, actually, this is basically a lot of ego communication, and with the Sun in there, there's a lot of trying to validate the ego. And when the North Node becomes conjunct the Sun, it can really blow up the ego. But then also too, he's got the counterbalance of the Moon and the South Node of the Moon here. So he was born very close to, I think, a lunar eclipse. So lots of powerful energy in this guy's chart. So and also too, when we look at the fixed stars here, Mercury is conjunct Athena, spiritual, artistic, and in science as well. I don't know. I don't think Donald Trump's very artistic, but whatever. I guess that's a matter of debate. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Of course, all the social media stuff is a little bit lower. I guess next broadcast, I will adjust this a little bit here, so I'm not this tiny little guy in the upper left-hand corner. You're like, where's Kevin? Where did he go? But of course, my head is big enough to fill any frame, as you can see. So, all right, everybody. Thank you once again, and I hope to see you next podcast.